There's like always a growing divide in everything these days. It doesn't matter the medium, it's there to some degree. It doesn't even pertain to any given platform or genre. Instead, it's a divide between those who make games and those who speak about them. And now it looks like if you don't consume the slop that's given to you like a good consumer, well, you're a bad person. Alright, before we go any further, let's talk about something that actually matters if you care about your online freedom. Because while we're sitting here watching companies pull the plug on games and services and entire ecosystems, there's a bigger pattern behind all of this, and it's control. Control over what you can access. Control over what you can play, and more importantly, control over your data, and that's where ExpressVPN comes in. Look, this isn't just about privacy anymore, it's about taking back your control. With ExpressVPN, you can secure your connection, keep your data encrypted, and actually browse without being tracked, throttled, or restricted depending on where you live. And let's be honest, if companies can decide overnight that something you paid for no longer exists, do you really think your data is off limits? With ExpressVPN, your IP is hidden, your activity is private, and you can even access content that might be blocked in your region. It's fast, it's easy to use, and it works across all your devices, PC, consoles, phone, whatever you're on. But here's the deal. If you click the link in the description or the pinned comment or scan the QR code on screen, you can get 4 months of ExpressVPN. That's extra time on top of your standard plan just for using that link. So if you care about your privacy, your access, and not being at the mercy of companies deciding what you can and can't use, check it out. Then be sure to check out the link in the description and pinned comment and find out how you can get up to 4 extra months by clicking the link in the description box below or scanning the QR code. Your data and privacy matters now more than ever, so why not have sound peace of mind? Thanks again to ExpressVPN for sponsoring this video, and now let's get back to it. I need to be taken out back because this is poison apparently. This brings me to Tim Cain. He's one of the original creators of Fallout. You know, post-apocalyptic wasteland, power armor ghouls, you know what Fallout is. Why am I even telling you this? Anyways, Tim believes that influencer culture from streamers, content creators, and more are a poison on the games industry because they, in a sense, control the conversation more than access media does. Here's Screen Rant's article on the situation, where they detail how Tim Cain believes that influencer culture is ruining gaming discourse. Here's another part of their article too, where they also claim that Tim Cain believes that influencers tell people how to think these days. I can't speak for every content creator person, but for myself, if you frequent my channel, I always tell you at the end of many of my videos over many years to always think for yourselves. To always form your own opinions, and never take only my opinion as your own. I quite literally said that in a recent video too to further stake my claim to this before making this video. Because yeah, I think that's important. You shouldn't listen to any one single person on every issue. You should, like I said, form your own opinions no matter what. It's totally fine if everyone watching my videos doesn't agree with me 100% because that's called being human. Like for example, I like pineapple on pizza. Some of you might want to throw me into a fire for even admitting that, which is cool. But it's still not going to make me magically not like pineapple on my pizza because, ooh, it's so good. You should try it sometime, honestly. Even if you hate it, it tastes awesome. But anyways, here's what Tim Cain said. Since I think it's better to hear it straight from him than say an article, so please watch this clip.
Many gamers don't even look to influencers for reviews. They look to influencers to be told how to think about the games. So people don't form opinions from the online video. They're handed an opinion from the online channel they're watching. What this means is I've seen reviews go from, this game has less combat and more puzzles and dialogues for you to interact with than this other game, to, this game is stupid and slow paced and made for casuals. I think you should skip it. That's a huge difference in how games are presented. But more people are going for that latter. They're like, I don't have time. There's too many games. Just tell me whether I should buy it. Tell me if it's for me. So they find someone they just like, and then that person's opinion becomes their opinion. This has a positive side. It's easy to find someone who sides with your preferences and therefore is a good guide for you finding new games. And I've talked about that. That's how I look for game reviewers myself. I look at their reviews for games I already know. If they like the ones I liked and didn't like the ones I didn't like, then I will trust them going forward on reviews of games that I haven't played yet. But the negative to this is more and more people seem to be abdicating their own judgment to that of people they see online. It's like, I don't want to think about it. You tell me what I should think about it. And I see that sometimes on this channel when I get multiple nearly identical comments from people, and I realize they're just quoting an online influencer. Sometimes it's a meme, but more often it's, oh, this influencer person said this thing about this, and now they're just quoting without any attribution.
So as you saw, Tim Kaine believes that people get their opinions from online influencers and don't form their own. Hilariously though, as you just heard too, he admits in his own clip there that he purposely goes out of his way himself to find reviewers of games that he agrees with as well, who also dislike the same things that he also dislikes too.
That's how I look for game reviewers myself. I look at their reviews for games I already know. If they like the ones I liked and didn't like the ones I didn't like, then I will trust them going forward.
But what I think Tim fails to understand is that what he's trying to push instead feels more like cope than really anything to mask and run damage control for stuff like bad video games that aren't resonating with players these days. I mean, sure, Tim Kaine worked on Fallout 1 and 2 and made the series when it was a CRPG. Bethesda eventually bought the rights and then turned it into what most of us know it to be these days. But Game Rant also tries to say that Tim Kaine's works in games these days are great too by saying, as you can see there where I highlighted, that Tim Kaine also worked on and consulted on The Outer Worlds 2. Oh boy, here we go. Which Game Rant calls relevant and modern and that people love the game. The reality is anything but that. Because in case you didn't know, The Outer Worlds 2 sold like hot wet garbage, and it was also a complete and total flop, and that cannot be denied. As Vice reported here in January, The Outer Worlds 2 wasn't able to even hit 1 million copies sold despite releasing on Steam, PlayStation, and Xbox simultaneously, while also being backed by Microsoft and being made by a AAA studio. This was not a game made in someone's basement, okay? This was full-blown offices and professionals involved. So not even 1 million during the winter season? That's horrific. It's also another Western RPG that purposely makes the women the de facto leaders of the majority of its factions within the game, and women in general hold most positions of power even outside of these factions too. Of course, the main villain is, just take a guess, what is it? Of course, it's a white man, because that has to be on brand as well. Daniel Camillo, who is an industry consultant, spoke on The Outer Worlds 2 a while back and how poorly it did. Here's what he said, as you can see. Sales for The Outer Worlds 2 are poor, presumably less than 1 million units almost 3 months after launch across all platforms. In comparison, the first game sold approximately 2 million units during the same time. A sequel selling less is bad for the studio, publisher, the IP's future. Why I'm bringing this up to say that while yes, Tim Kaine did co-create Fallout, it doesn't magically mean that he has the pulse on what the internet or what content creators think or do as well. Because again, he consulted and created The Outer Worlds 2, which was rejected wholeheartedly by the gaming public. Again, if that weren't the case, then Outer Worlds 2 would have done better, but it didn't. It's because Tim Kaine and Obsidian, which developed the game, were creating another one of those games. You know what kind of game I mean. The modern audience slop sort of experience that nobody really likes to pay money for. And remember, The Outer Worlds was meant to be Fallout in space, and since you had the co-creator of Fallout working on it, this game was practically what Tim Kaine would have wanted in a Fallout game if he could work on that IP himself again, which is, again, a female, every woman is powerful, men are not. White men bad, just, oh god, sort of simulator with a very diverse group of companions that look like a corporate checklist of nonsense at best. The same Outer Worlds 2 where Obsidian infamously, as you can see there, tweeted that the game would be $70 instead of $80. After Microsoft tried to push for more money for their games because nobody was pre-ordering or buying it. And even then, that clearly did not save the game, and now The Outer Worlds 2, as Screen Rant confirms here, is officially dead, like as a franchise, and will likely never get a sequel because the sales were beyond disastrous for a game of its size and scope. And this was Tim Kaine's most recent game, right? Where he believed it was somehow what people wanted from Western RPGs in 2025, or I guess 2026 now too, when it was nothing even close to that at all. Every edge was rubbed off, every problematic element was sanitized to not offend anyone, and the usual girl boss agenda people are tired of. So if I seem hesitant to take Tim's opinion here as gospel, it's cause the proof is in the pudding, as they say. And just like YouTube, or really any other content-focused profession, you're only as good as your last video, game, song, you name it. And Tim's latest wasn't good. I don't hate the guy. I don't wish ill upon him. I don't want to fight him in a fist fight. But if he's going to try to paint all content creators as being this poison to the gaming players' minds out here, well, he himself spews and creates the very sort of poison that has already rotted out and ruined better studios with other big flops that followed similar design philosophies. I can't exactly take what he says as gospel. I just can't do that. Tim using his platform here to effectively say that good games are being ruined by influencer culture is complete cope, and he knows it. He knows that what he's really trying to do is weaponize the access media, which is clearly on his side, due to just how many articles on this topic exist from his video that he wants influencers, streamers, whatever you want it to be, to have less power. But this is the usual suspects that are also trying to frame this narrative, even though it is not working. The truth is, if your game is good, you really don't need to do much about it. When a game is great, people can just tell. Be it pattern recognition or not. Why do you think that Elden Ring didn't need that many trailers before launch to drum up their hype? Because From Software is proven. The content spoke for itself, but I noticed that the alarming amount of games out of the West that have done poorly, it's always the same cope. It's the players' faults or the content creators, but it's never them, the developers. Why is that? To me, this entire video of Tim's comes off as he's just very mad and also disappointed that the Outer Worlds died because he completely misread what he believed gaming audiences would want these days. And I do believe that the Outer Worlds is what Tim believed that people wanted, otherwise he wouldn't have had his name attached to the project to the level that he did. And then he found out in real time that, oh wait, the things I like or want in games are actually nothing close to what anybody wants. Yeah, people don't want insufferable girl boss leaders, having every faction led by women. Most bad guys are men, and a diverse borderline ChatGPT looking set of companions to choose from. Look, I beat Outer Worlds 1. I thought it was forgettable, nothing remarkable at all. It was definitely trying to be followed in space, and it failed in my opinion. None of the characters were very interesting. The only companion name that I remember is Parvati. That's literally the only one. I don't even remember anyone's names in that game. And if you put a gun to my head, I genuinely could not tell you a single side quest from that game despite having played it myself. Not even the main quest. It's like I played that game and it just disappeared from my mind. It was so forgettable. I think I even got a code for Outer Worlds 2, or maybe it was Avowed. Either way, I didn't play them despite being given a code. I have no interest, man, in playing something that is made by people who clearly think I shouldn't exist. So Tim thinks my existence as who I am in this space is somehow hurtful, when in reality, I'm just a guy with a laptop speaking my mind. The fact that my existence is this threatening to these people is kind of hilarious, actually. Do you ever wonder why they hate people like me and more? It's because it's so easy to poke holes in their arguments and their beliefs and how they do things. They hate that I have common sense. I mean, this is the same game industry that tried to cancel Atomic Heart after all, which that game is basically what if BioShock had a kid with Wolfenstein with a speck of Far Cry in it, and unlike the Outer Worlds 2, Atomic Heart sold millions of copies, and wow, yeah, it's getting a sequel. I'm actually playing Atomic Heart right now myself, and I can confidently tell you that the game has zero pandering in it whatsoever. Is the game weird? Oh, 100%. The dialogue at times is a little too zany, but I like the relationship between P3, that's the Asian guy you play, and Charles, which is the robot AI in your glove that you wear. It's like two snarky a-holes trying to out-sarcasm the other one constantly. I like that Atomic Heart is very much all in on its fantasy and doesn't jeopardize or try to act like the developers are ashamed or whatever of their homeland. Instead, they just kind of embrace their culture and put it front and center, probably why Atomic Heart has zero diversity in it too. I mean, it's set in Russia after all, and again, the game sold millions of copies for a reason. Because unlike the Outer Worlds 2, Atomic Heart actually just gave you a unique and very weird experience, and this is key. They did not talk down to you at all. Like, it could be all so easy, right? But it never really is it? Because Fallout right now, they're kind of in a weird spot too. Bethesda is still releasing weird, broken games like Starfield on PS5, and their Oblivion remaster is still broken to this day. And yet, despite these franchises being held together by duct tape at the best of times, they still outdo Outer Worlds even on their worst days. Video Game Chronicle also did an article on Tim Kane's comments, and they delved deeper into what he said too. Tim, at one point, states that he has no idea where gaming discourse will be when it comes to like 2020 and beyond, right? Here's what he said. Either things are going to become even more tightly controlled in bubbles, which means people will stick to this one influencer, or this tiny group of influencers, and all of their thoughts will be guided by these people, he continues. Or maybe the next generation is going to get tired of that, get tired of all the labeling and tired of all the placing things in a box. I defined a box, and this game is in this box. And I'm not going to view it in any other way. He finishes with this. I'm curious where that goes. The internet basically allows the pendulum like that to swing really far and really fast. So I don't know where the 2030s are going to go, but that's what happened with game design and online influencers and social media over about the last 4 to 5 years. interesting that Tim never once questions why the pendulum swung the way that it did in the early 2020s himself. Because to admit the reason for said swing would be to admit that his beliefs and that of the greater industry beyond began to splinter from what the core player bases out there wanted from their games. If this wasn't true, we wouldn't have seen the amount of massive flops that we did, would we? And these flops would not have very similar belief systems or game design or even people working on them either, right? All the games that failed, Kill the Justice League, Saints Row Remake, Dustborn, Forspoken, Veilguard, the list just goes on, have much more in common with, say, The Outer Worlds 2 than, say, Fallout or even Atomic Heart, don't they? These games that are being made by people where the developers seem to actively despise the very consumer base that they are tasked with catering to. Anti-video games would even be a good way of personifying them, I would say. I think instead what Tim fails to read or get is that what many modern game devs do these days is instead dismiss what they deem negative reactions to what they make as fake criticism, which in turn means that they place themselves and their opinions or their beliefs into this, like their own bubble, as Tim would say, right? And I do believe that many people actually have their own reactions to these games in a way that is similar to others as well. Yet they may not be able to form these opinions into, say, a video themselves, but when they see a content creator, a streamer, whoever it is, take what they see as their own issues with a game and then form it into a digestible way, say a YouTube video, that's why it resonates. If this wasn't true, then my channel wouldn't exist now, would it? But I do think game developers in the West, at least, have come to their criticism of their games from an objective position of bad faith, because they don't want to hear what is wrong about what they make, especially if the parts being criticized are intrinsically tied to the fundamental DNA of what the game is meant to represent or be about. Like in Outer Worlds 2, right? With its very progressive and women are better than men at everything way of doing things. And I think the other thing that Tim tends to forget or likely just doesn't want to tackle or mention is that he knows that the AAA industry in the West especially would rather preach to their audiences about something like social or political issues these days by masking it within a paid game product. And they believe that creating a game not for funness sake but for social activism reasons instead is more important than delivering a fun video game to someone who pays money for it. I think these sorts of people, like a Tim Cain and more, are instead blaming online content creators because their grift cannot exist because of, I guess, free speech of those who see their patterns for what they really are, which is a grift. Plain and simple. Maybe if you prioritized making a fun game that wasn't preachy, you would have had an Outer Worlds 3. But that would mean you would need to be honest with why you're still making games in the first place. And based on Outer Worlds 2, it's very obvious you guys were not in this to make a fun game first. Instead, you wanted to push social mindsets over creating a fun gameplay loop, and it shows. Tim also confirmed in that Video Games Chronicle article that he has also rejoined Obsidian officially as a full-time employee and is working on an unannounced project, but that doesn't really fill me with confidence. Because Obsidian's latest RPG offerings, The Outer Worlds 2 and Avowed, were made fun of because they were the most modern audience games ever made. Not to mention, NPCs still don't move in Avowed, which is really weird to me. Like, who thought that was a good idea? And it's also ironic to hear Tim, who I can only guess is a hardcore leftist, because let's be real, he works at Obsidian full-time. The likelihood is that he believes in the same politics as Avowed's art director and all of them too. Just a guess, but I would bet money that I'm right. Either way, it is rich that the very people believing the consumer bases out here are being manipulated by scary YouTubers or streamers are actually the same sorts of people who conveniently forego common sense on a daily basis to ignore obvious problems in today's society because they were told what to think and believe by news, websites, and more. I just think why Tim is saying what he's saying is very simple. It's an excuse so that he and people who think like him within games can just continue to deliver bad games not meant to entertain, but to brainwash people and force their politics down their throats instead without resistance. Unfortunately for Tim and Obsidian, it isn't working. I shudder at the idea of Tim Cain working on a new Fallout game in the future. I can only imagine the story there. Let me guess. You're an immigrant who comes to, I don't know, New York City in the post-apocalypse from like Mexico or somewhere nondescript somehow. And the big bad is a white guy with blonde hair wearing a suit that's older who yells into a microphone, and you team up with a bunch of racially diverse people. The group is probably led by a black woman with dreads. And she has to be lesbian, of course, and her lesbian girlfriend probably has like half her head shaved or something. There's going to be at least 2 people in this resistance fighter group that have different pronouns. Someone has a septum piercing unironically. And every bad guy is going to be like a Republican or a man at the very least. And the end game goal of Tim's new Fallout game is, if he made one, would be that nobody's illegal on stolen land, and that if you believe in anything that isn't what Tim believes in, it's bad and evil. And then when the game flops, and Tim will just throw his hands up and go, oh, if only for those gosh darn influencers and their influencing. They're trying to hurt my free speech. They just don't want to see a woman in the White House. And then you can bet your sweet cheeks the character creator will also be very diverse and allow for all the different body parts, even if it doesn't make sense. And because, how are you going to get hormone blockers in the post-apocalypse anyways, like when even like things like food sources are scarce? It doesn't matter, because games shouldn't be made to be fun anyways. They're just vehicles to push ideas onto impressionable minds. And this is why people like this are not as successful as they used to be, because they refuse to understand that their beliefs are not just harmful, but also stupid and boring and annoying and tiring and all the other things too. But this is all just coalescing in the same argument and finality, which is that this is all a disconnect no matter what. And maybe even something deeper, like a growing discomfort with the fact that traditional gatekeepers no longer control the conversations like they used to. Gaming discussions used to be centralized and normal. Now it's all over the place. You can't control it. But I think that's actually better, because something like this shouldn't be allowed to be controlled by any one person anyways. Because once these people get their hands on that control, they will just twist the industry into exactly what they think it should be. And again, do we really need more Outer Worlds 2s or Avoweds? Or do we need more stuff like Fallout 3 that's weird and unique, like maybe like an Atomic Heart? The answer is obvious. But I think what Tim is mad about is unfounded, because he's asking the wrong questions here. He may say that it's the online influencer's fault, but he never stops to ask, why did the audience stop trusting these traditional gaming voices, the websites, the media, or people like Tim instead? That can't just be random. It's not just a switch. And honestly, this is the part that this industry often struggles to confront, because they don't like the answer. The rise of influencers didn't just happen in a vacuum. It happened because audiences increasingly felt disconnected from the very people who were meant to speak for them, like IGN or a Tim Cain, for example. People turned to influencers more because they felt more authentic than here's IGN saying everything is fine when it really isn't. And it's also rich coming from Tim Cain, right? A guy who worked on Fallout, a series especially in the early days that was all about sharp observation and player interpretation and choice. Ironically, now they don't want you to have a choice. They just want you to be exactly like them or you're a demon, and it's really honestly stupid and tiring. This reflects also a broader tension, even inside games and beyond. You see, the old structure was all about controlled messaging, professional access, and so on, but now anyone with a microphone, a camera, and an audience can speak their opinions freely, and that changes the power dynamic that these types really weren't ready for. You know how badly you need to screw up this gravy train for people in their bedrooms like me to be able to challenge you like this? You guys did this to yourselves. You can't blame me or whoever. If people still believed y'all were the voice of the industry, then you would be the voice of the industry, wouldn't you? But you aren't, because you took it all for granted. You believed that you knew better and you wanted that power for yourselves, and now that you don't have it, don't blame me about it. Blame yourselves for making stupid decisions. I didn't tell you to make Outer Worlds 2 or Veilguard. I don't remember seeing my name in those credits, so why are you blaming me for your bad takes and decisions? You did it after all. This is why you have that skepticism. So that developers can criticize influencers all they want. People are just going to see it for what it is, which is less of a concern for discourse and more just a frustration over losing control of the narrative they used to control 100% of the time. Ironically, Fallout as a series represents this tension perfectly. It's all about systems collapsing, institutions failing its populace, and then ordinary people having to navigate through the aftermath. Gee, sounds a lot like the gaming sphere today, doesn't it, Tim Cain? Which is why these conversations resonate the way that they do, because people can't just care about games anymore. Because the people that are tasked with making them are not interested in doing just that, because it's no longer about what's fun, but who gets to shape the narrative instead. Tim Cain isn't wrong that modern gaming discourse can be chaotic. It absolutely can, but chaos doesn't just emerge from nowhere. It emerged because audiences stopped believing that traditional structures represented them anymore. And once that trust breaks, the conversation then changes permanently, and they know that. That doesn't mean that influencers are always right. It doesn't mean that the old guard is always wrong. But it does mean one thing, that gaming culture no longer belongs to a handful of gatekeepers, and whether the industry likes it or not, that reality isn't changing anytime soon. And again, remember to check out the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen for 4 extra months of ExpressVPN. Thanks again to ExpressVPN for sponsoring this video. But what do you think? Let me know as always. Thanks for being here. Subscribe if you'd like to. And remember, always ask questions and form your own opinions, or someone else will do it for you.